Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the only 3 ways that exist to help you bring in more new patients into your practice. Now, at the time that you're listening to this, I think this is going to come out pretty much on Christmas Day. It's a week or so before that I'm recording it. So, one, happy Christmas or happy holiday season, depending on where you are in the world and what your beliefs and customs are there too. I really want to help to simplify 2024 for you. There are so many moving pieces in a chiropractic practice. It's really easy to become overwhelmed. And if we can compress things in and think about, there are actually, again, lots of 3s in this too. The ingredients of a profitable, enjoyable, and impactful practice. Okay, here's what we need to do. We need to attract in new business. We need to convert these people into patients, and we need to work out how to retain them. So this is attract, convert, and retain. Now, these 3 principles here are the same for any business. It doesn't matter whether I'm talking to you as a plumber, as a hardware store, as a food store. We all need to attract new business. We need to turn them from prospects into customers. And then from those customers, what we need to do is we need to retain them. Now, what I want to do today is further dive in again to that attraction part of it and simplify that into the only 3 ways that we have for building and attracting new patients into our practice. Now, the reason I want to do this, again, what it allows us to do is decrease the overwhelm. It simplifies things and it brings in focus, okay? So simplification and focus, these are really, really good things. So what are these 3 ways that we have to bring in new patients? Now, some of this is an adaptation from some things I learned from Alex Hormozy and other people, books along the way there too. But there's nothing new in this world there too. We're all just kind of taking principles and bits and pieces. But here's what they are, okay? There's paid, there's content, and there's relationships. And so what we're going to do in this episode is we'll talk about the key components or key criteria of each of those. We'll talk about the pros and the cons. And at the end, we'll talk about what might be right for you or some key considerations to help you make a choice for 2024 of where to focus your energy so that you can actually attract more business in. And in episodes going forward there too, we'll talk about conversion and retention. We've been doing a lot of that over this year as well. So let's dive into paid first. It's pretty obvious what paid is. It's things like social media ads, Google ads, sponsorships, letterbox drops, all those type of things. So here's some of the key distinctions that we have or key criteria for paid. Now, first of all, there's money exchanged, okay? So there's a direct financial investment that the practice has in exchange for visibility and promotion, okay? So we give someone some money and we get visibility and promotion. Now, it could be in the form of ad spend on social media platforms. It could be Google ads. It could be traditional advertising mediums like print and radio and television. Doesn't matter. If we're paying for it, it comes under this paid as well. The other key criteria is that we have control over the messaging. So we have, in most cases, almost complete control over the content, the targeting, and the timing. These are all good things. Content, target, and timing as well. We're able to get, in most cases, again, immediate visibility. So this can be good. We'll talk about this later for brand new practices. Paid advertising typically offers immediate exposure. So I can run some ads this morning and I can be getting exposure to, many cases, tens of thousands of people in my community this afternoon. It can happen very, very quickly as well. The other good thing about it is there's limited personal interaction. So in many cases, we're going from one to many, and we don't have to be after the setup phase. There's very little we need to have. So there's no direct personal engagement with the audience or the ad itself there too. So what are the pros of this? What's really good about it? I mentioned a couple inside of there, but let's jump in there too. It is the targeted reach. So you can very easily reach a very specific demographic. So mums, dads, athletes, office workers, people of different ages as well. So when you have clarity in around who it is that your practice serves, your niche, and what value you deliver to them, we can put a message in front of those people if we pay for it. It's very easy for us to do as well. The results can be really quick. As I mentioned beforehand, we can be putting an ad out there this morning and it can be reaching people this afternoon and we can have new patients coming in tomorrow. Like that's as quick as it can be as well. So paid advertising often brings in much faster results than organic methods. Not always, but most times it can as well. It's really scalable, okay? So you can increase your budget for more visibility and you can decrease it when necessary. So you can turn it on or off. So for practice I'm working with over in New Zealand at the moment, who we have a whole lead in with how we run our Facebook ads, and we start with sharing good quality organic content first to build relationships, and then we shift into paid. And they got such a tremendous result that they had to turn the ad off in 2 days. Okay, so we can do this, turn it on and off. And once we start to get some results with it, if we want to get more results with it, we can just kind of double our ad budget. That's not as easy to do in the content or the relationships for us to be able to flip a switch to turn it up or turn it down, okay? It's great for brand visibility, so we can increase brand awareness even among those who don't even click the ad. So they will see us going through this concept called mere exposure, MERE, that people are becoming aware of a brand even if they're not clicking on it. So what's the downside to paid advertising? Well, the biggest one for most of you is cost. It can be expensive, especially for, some platforms are more expensive than others. So Google Ads at the moment, depending on how competitive it is in your area, this is one of the more expensive ones, depending on what keywords you're bidding on there too. But it can cost well north of $100 to get a new patient in. Now, again, we have to think about that word expensive, because if it's a high quality patient, and they're actually reasonable quality patients that come from Google AdWords, and we do a good job with our conversion and retention, then that $100 patient can be worth several times that, okay? Thousands of dollars, in which case it's not really expensive. But if we're new off and we can't carry the weight of it, then the costs can be an issue for some of us as well. There's skill required, okay? So effective ad creation and campaign management, these require specific skills. They're learnable. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I think it's a bit of a giggle that there's agencies out there charging chiropractors thousands of dollars a month to run their ads. I have a course inside a community influencer where I show chiropractors to do it, and they come back to me with, I can't believe it's that simple. Like anything, once you know how to do it, if somebody teaches you, it's incredibly simple. So, the New Zealand chiros I was talking about before was all run by them, okay? No admin, no staff. They ran their own ads there too. A bit of a learning scale to kind of jump up there beforehand. But there is some skill that's required. You'll have to learn something as well, okay? The results can be temporary in that the flow of new patients often stops as soon as the advertising stops. And eventually, if we do it for long enough, one of the cons is that our audience will reach a level of ad blindness. They just don't see it anymore. Okay, so we're running ads. This can be one of the problems if you've got yourself into a cycle of running discount Facebook ads all the time. People will stop to see them, or you can position yourself as the discount chiropractor. I have many chiropractors that come to start with me in community influencer, that this is the scenario we're in, this vicious cycle of running ads, spending money to get patients, and then they've spent all this money, so therefore have to run more ads, and the ads get less effective and it gets more cost. And this is part of ad blindness as well. Okay, so there's pros and cons, and again, in a little moment we'll talk about who this might be best for. But let's jump into the second way that we can attract new business into our chiropractic practice. The second way for us to think about, and that is content. Creating content. Now, when we think about creating content, obviously we jump towards social media and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok, but it's not just that, because we can and should be writing articles for newspapers, magazines, radio, television, PR. It's our website. It's all of those things, not just social media. And this is where, again, if people are saying content's not working for them, social media content is just a very narrow band of it as well, okay? Google My Business is another platform where you should be creating content for. So what are some of the key criteria for content? Content tends to be a one-to-many communication, okay? It's created for a broad audience, okay? It's not personalized to an individual interaction, okay? It's reaching a group of people. This is the difference between some of the relationship stuff we'll talk about in a moment there too. We can have digital and physical formats. So again, blog posts, social media, but it could also be, physical in the forms of articles that get into the newspaper and magazines also. There is indirect engagement, okay? So it's not one-to-one engagement we talked about. So there might be feedback, which we often get from our social media, but the engagement is not direct with us, okay? So there's incredible long-term value and SEO benefits. So content can continue, if it's done right, to attract in new patients well after it's created, particularly stuff that's on our website. Social media tends to disappear, but there are long-term value if we do it right on our website. It's Great because it can have an educational and informative focus. So it's generally aimed at educating our audiences, right? It's about building authority and expertise. It's about establishing you as the authority in your community as well. So let's talk about some of the pros. I touched on a lot of them as we're going through with those key criteria there too. But again, let's really simplify or clarify those as well. The first is it builds authority. Okay. Content marketing and creating content for our website, particularly creating videos where you're teaching and showing proof, is really powerful for authority. So consistently, the word there is consistently good content positions you as an authority and an expert in your field. It really can separate you from other chiropractors. There can be long-term benefits. Good content will continue to attract patients long after it's published. I had a coaching call this morning with a really lovely chiropractor who's new into her practice, and she was telling me about some of the practice members that are coming in to see her now who are going through. She's doing a vagal kind of workshop that she's going, a challenge there too. So they're participating in that. They're watching her videos online. They're reading her blog. And so all of this content here are digital assets that are working for her. So she doesn't have to work one-to-one, but she's building up assets. This is what's really important for us to think about as well. So it can allow for engagement. It's incredibly versatile because content can be repurposed. So we can take a video and turn it into a blog post. We can take that blog post and turn it into a carousel. We can take that video and turn it into a podcast. So the versatility is as well. One of the other pros, one of the other great benefits of content is that it's free, okay? There's little to no costs involved other than if you're going to create a podcast, you need something to record it. So a camera, although we've got our mobile phones, but there's virtually no cost involved in this as well. Now, the cons on the other side of things is that getting really good at content can be time consuming. So it requires significant investment of time. What many members tell me is that to begin with, for them to create videos and share them takes them hours. Now, they get better at it within usually 60 days. They've got it nailed. But the first couple of months, it just feels horrible, okay? The results are not as immediate as they can be with paid advertising. So if I put a post out there this afternoon, I don't always have new patients tomorrow. Now, when we get good at our posts, at asking the right questions and building interactions, we can get that happening, but it's not as predictable as with paid. Again, there's skill development as well. So creating quality content, because it's not just about content, okay? It's quality content requires good writing or production skills. And that is just understanding the structure of a video, how to communicate a message, and how to put together a good call to action. So there are skills involved in that too. And then perhaps the final one here is consistency. Content doesn't work if it's something that you do for a week, stop for a week, do for a week, stop for a week. Content works to attract practice members in when you commit to it over the next 90 days and hopefully over the next 180 days. That on a weekly basis, we're showing up and doing these things. We build this momentum. You can't get great SEO for your website from a shotgun approach. We have to be laser focused and consistent with it as well, okay? So that's some of the downsides there. Time-consuming, slow results. Some skill is required there too, and consistency. All right, let's talk about relationships, the third one. So we've talked about paid. We've talked about content. Let's talk about relationships. And then I'll help you make some decisions about which ones might be best for you as well, okay? So we're talking about relationships. Referrals is a relationship, okay? Relationships with local businesses, joint ventures, community groups. These are all examples there as well. But some of the key criteria of relationships is personal engagement. There is a level of where you are personally engaging with them. So even, for example, if you're doing a spinal screening, I put that underneath relationships because it's one-to-one. If you're doing corporate talks, then that again is engagement not one-to-one, but it's one-to-many, but you're actually there doing it as well. So direct interactions with groups or individuals. Okay, so it's either one-to-one to one-to-many. It's almost unbeatable for when it comes to building trust and rapport because we're actually there for it as well. So it focuses on establishing and nurturing trust and rapport over time. There tends to be a non-monetary exchange, or there is a non-monetary exchange. Otherwise, we put it in the paid category as well. So the primary investment in this situation is time and effort rather than money. There is a community or network involvement, so it involves engaging with your local community, existing patients, local businesses or community groups as well. There's referral and word of mouth potential. So the success of this strategy really hinges on the quality of the relationships, okay, and the resulting word of mouth relationships that comes from there as well. So what are some of the pros? What's really great about this? Well, there's a super high trust factor when we show up in person for these things. It builds massive amounts of trust. And on top of that, too, the referrals that come from this trusted networks as well are really great quality people. So we all know that when we get a referral, they tend to be some of the highest quality patients that we get. Now, if you do a great job with your content and somebody comes into you and they've watched a bunch of your videos, they've been consuming your social media content, they've crawled their way through your website, looked at all of your reviews, trust me, that's a very, very, very high quality patient who's ready to start care with you, okay? But referrals are another source of that as well. So it's great for community ties. So building strong local networks embeds you into the community. And then we get to start this wonderful things where we're, with these two groups of patients, these patients who are active under care, and then this community group who aren't active yet. Okay, it's like a slow rolling wave that's coming into you. When you build community, it builds massive stability in your practice, okay? It's cost effective because, as I mentioned before, there's no investment other than investment of your time. It can be really sustainable too. So this relationship building can really bring on a steady stream of patients over time. Lauren and the team at her practice have really invested hard in this. And so they get patients each and every week from different relationships that they've built that just trickle on in, but those trickles all together can in some cases form a really strong stream. What's the downside of this relationship side of things? It can be time intensive, certainly in the early stages when you're coming to build these relationships. Now, if you've just moved into a community and you don't have any relationships, it's going to take time to build them. And in many cases, we don't want to, and we can't really force this. When we try and force a relationship, we look needy and we break down those pillars of trust that form the foundation of a strong relationship. So we have less control over it. So the flow and quality of referrals can be unpredictable. So, if somebody tells me, look, we have a internal referral driven practice, it's wonderful. It's a reflection that you're doing a good job. But what you're unable to do is if I say to you, how do you get more of them next week? It is less control. However, when you master paid, okay, and content to some extent, if you want to get more of them, you know how to turn that up, spend more money on it, run more ads as well. So the reach can be limited. So it's primarily local focus. It can be less effective for reaching a broader audience. And this is not always an issue for us as practices because we want a local audience anyway. So there will be and should be reciprocity expected. So partnerships. In order for a partnership to work, it has to be win-win. And it won't work long time if you go in there expecting more than you're going to give. And the opposite happens too. There are many chiropractors out there that are giving more than they're receiving, and that doesn't work either. That'll eventually lead to some form of resentment as well. But there will be mutual effort that needs to be put in there too. And this can be challenging to manage as well, find the right person. So we need to make sure that you are setting up the right people, fostering the right relationships, understanding that there is less control and it can be time intensive as well. So we've talked about those three: content, paid, and relationships. So which one is right for you? Now, my recommendation is that if you're to get that practice we talked about before that has, a lovely income, a great impact, and that's really thriving, it's super enjoyable too, is that you need to have mastery over two of these. And this is my challenge, my invitation to you for 2024, is to get mastery over two of those. So if we just go deep on one of these, and what tends to happen with most chiropractors is they go deep on one and a particular area in one. So as I mentioned beforehand, they're all about relationships, but they're all about relationships with internal referrals. They're not about relationships with community groups, other practitioners, businesses. It's just all about referrals. Or in the paid category, what happens is that people are just all about Facebook ads. And again, if someone's just doing content, all they're doing is Instagram content. So if we're just doing one of these and then one area inside of those, you're incredibly vulnerable. You will not build that thriving practice alone on that. And in fact, what I think you need to do is have mastery over two of those. So perhaps it's paid and relationships, or is it content and relationships? And then inside of each of those, there are several areas that you want to be working on as well. Now, I've got some thoughts. I've got sort of 8 little prompts here that might help you if you're still a bit confused in terms of which one should I start on. And probably by now, by the time I've gone through the pros and cons, you're starting to get an idea of what might work for you as well. But here's some things that you can think about as well. So the first is to really assess your strengths and preferences. So what are your personal skills? Like, are you good at creating content? Do you excel in interpersonal relationships? Your natural inclinations can really help to drive and guide you with regards to which strategy. Look at your existing networks. Do you have a strong community presence that you can leverage? Again, this is probably not going to be something that you have if you're brand new in practice, okay? So how are you with technology? Are you tech savvy? Are you good at digital marketing? Are you comfortable in front of a camera? Are you good on a computer in terms of bringing all that stuff together there too? So these are things that would guide you in a direction as well. The second thing to think about is your audience. Does your audience have a preference for one of these? Do they tend to be more digital? Do they tend to be, can you build relationships with them? Or is it all about kind of, creating content? Now, the good news is that most audiences kind of go across all of these, but some of them can be harder to reach. Social media, both by content, particularly with paid, the one thing that we can do is it can really target any particular group of people, location, ages, and interests as well. So think about demographics, think about patient needs and behaviors there. The third thing to think about is perhaps evaluate your resources. And so the two big resources that it comes to marketing is going to be time and money, okay? So paid advertising requires a budget. So how much can you afford? Now you can get into the paid game for very little, $15 a week, a few bucks a day boosting posts is enough to get started with. It doesn't have to be thousands of dollars a month that you're spending. But for some of you, even that is a little bit tight as well. But maybe you've got lots of time, okay? So content relationships and content creation and building relationships, these are time intensive. And if you're more established in practice or you don't want to be spending the time, then you might want to consider moving away from those. Of course, one of the things that you should think about as well is just testing and learning. See this as an experiment. And you need to give yourself some time because testing this for a week won't work. But I would think, a minimum of 90 to 180 days, so 3 to 6 months, to say, listen, we're going to dive into relationship building and see how it works. And maybe it's a success for you. Or maybe you are able to identify some things like, I really don't like this, this, and that. It tends to be me needing to be around on weekends and outside of work hours, and that doesn't work because of my family commitments. But testing and learn, start small, measure your results as well. So number 5 here is consider your practice's stages and goals. And this matches really closely with what I said beforehand in terms of evaluating your resources, okay? New practices tend to have lots of time and no money. Established practices tend to have less time but more money, okay? Now, again, that's a little bit of a generalization, but where are you at? What do you have more of? And maybe you have plenty of both of those, in which case you can use that to guide you as well. So again, be aware of market trends and competition. So one of the things that you would want to do is look at what are other people doing and do something different. Now, this is a mistake that chiropractors make. It's funny with this, and I understand why we do it, but when we're looking at putting together our website, what we do is we look at everybody else's website and we want to create one the same. When we're looking at working out what we're going to charge for our adjustment, what we do is we look at what are the other chiropractors in our area charging, and we want to charge similar. Now, this is the exact opposite of what you want to be doing in business, because what we want to be doing is being different. We want to give them a reason to choose us compared to those other people. If we're being vanilla in amongst us, there's no reason for us to stand out. So look at what other people are doing and do something different as well. What are the trends at the moment? You might be able to jump on, a few years ago, video to quickly get into that. What things can you do that are being different? How can you jump on trends that maybe other practices in your area aren't onto yet as well? And again, at the end here, the final thing that you might want to consider here is, to make sure that you're aligning with your ethical and professional standards. So, does your registration board frown on certain types of content? And again, we're able to do all of these, but for instance, here in Australia, we're really limited on the use of testimonials and things like that. Now, we can still create great paid content. We can still create great content without that too. But ethically, what sits best for you? What meets you? And this comes back to, the beginning when I was talking about kind of strengths and weaknesses. But don't ignore what your registration board and your advertising requirements are also. So let's sum all of this up. Okay, if we want to practice that's profitable, that's impactful and enjoyable, 3 things we need to do: attract new business, convert that business into patients, and then retain them long term. Now, in the attraction, there are 3 ways that we attract new business in. We do this through content creation, we do this through relationship building, and we do this through paid. If we're to build a really thriving practice, then we need to get mastery on at least 2 of those. And those practices out there, okay, those unicorns that get mastery over all 3 of those, they really are a wonderful practice, and they reach that nirvana of never having to worry about new patients again, okay? And with time, you can absolutely master this. So my invitation to you in 2024 during this festive period between Christmas and New Year, when you're listening to this, or maybe you've got this on the back catalogue there too, is to invite you to choose 2 of these to start to invest in over a minimum of the next 90, but hopefully the next 180 days, so you can start to bring more peeps into your practice. Folks, that's it for this episode here as well. I will speak with you. It'll be next year, okay? In a week's time when this next episode comes out. As always, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. See you back here soon. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.